300. All of this knowing that Native Americans were truly the first architects on this continent. And so through all that history, Tammy really, she's a trailblazer, a role model. We've been saying a lot, if they can see it, they can be it. And Tammy's really involved in that. And she's a great example of leadership, of mentorship, and of inclusion as well. In 2018, she won the AIA Whitney M. Young Award, which goes to people who embody social responsibility and actively address a relevant issue. And Tammy Eaglebowl, of course, was elevated to the College of Fellows as well. So join me in welcoming Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee also for asking me to present today. I'm honored to be here with you as part of your conference. Today I want to talk to you about female roles in Indigenous architecture. This is a presentation that I wanted to develop for many, many years, and I was able to kind of work on it and focus on it in the last 2 years with some colleagues of mine that I'll introduce you to also in this. So as Vanessa said, this is kind of my history. When I was a young girl, my dad was very involved in tribal education. He was a director of schools for the Midwest, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Native American schools. So he was heavily involved with whenever there would be a new school designed. And as a young girl, I remember him talking to me about that process and how he was frustrated that architects would not involve or engage the client, like the teachers, the community at all. And they would, kind of just design these schools in a vacuum. And what was the result were schools that were not only not functional, but were taking kind of liberties with the culture and interpreting our culture in ways that was not accurate or was not respectful. So that was one of my earliest recollections about how architecture could have an impact on the community. The other kind of major thing that influenced me deciding to become an architect was I grew up in Aberdeen, South Dakota, which is a non-native community. It's off the reservation. But my family, both my mom and my dad, are Lakota, born and raised in Pine Ridge, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. So I spent a lot of time there with my extended family and with my grandmother. And what I saw was just such a difference between my community and the community on the reservation. Schools were different, houses were different, stores were different, the roads were different, everything was different. And I would ask my dad why that was, and he would explain to me why Native Americans were in the situation that they were in, and that there needs to come a time where we start to get out of that situation. And his dad told him that when that happened, they would need architects and lawyers. So my dad wanted to be an architect, but at the time in the 50s, his guidance counselor at his school on the reservation, who was a non-native man, told him that he couldn't even hope to become an architect, that was a profession that Native Americans could not even aspire to. So he went on to be in education. He started out as a teacher, later on became an administrator, then later on worked for the government in kind of a larger role, helping Native students pursue their dreams of higher education. So he was able to, help a lot of students that way, but he always regretted not becoming an architect. So with me, when he saw that I had this interest and I had some talent with drawing, and he kind of encouraged me to pursue this and encouraged me to think about it as a change things that I saw were a problem. So Wanda Costa is the First Nations female architect in Canada. And I've gotten to know her over the last several years. She now works at Arizona State University, leading an amazing program down there, educating future architects. It's done in cooperation with the Native Studies program at ASU. So we typically do this presentation together, and we developed it together. So I wanted to put her resume in there. I will be showing you some of her work also later on in the program here. Tamara Begaye is another trailblazer who I work closely with on this presentation. She's the first Navajo or DNA female licensed architect. So she's one of our up and coming young architects. She has her own firm in Albuquerque, and she's doing some amazing exhibit a couple years ago, and that was just such a wonderful experience. We worked together with Canadian architects, and we were actually part of the Canadian exhibit that talked about Indigenous architecture and how Indigenous architects are using our shared history of being descendants from boarding school, people who went to boarding schools. So it's this whole, you know, history of behavior and abuse and experience that has, you know, how has that come down through us, you know, because we all were descendants of either our parents or grandparents went through that system. So it was an interesting, amazing exhibit that we were able to work on, and we got to go to Venice and get it, you know, open it and everything. So it was great. Within the AIA and within the United States, there are over 150,000 architects. These are the 7 that we know of that are Indigenous women. So, you know, there's not that many of us. You know, there may be more that we don't know about, but these are the 7 that are active and who we know about and who are, you know, working in this area of kind of trying to make our Indigenous architecture more known and more of a mainstream topic. So when we get together, we, you know, obviously talk about the issues that we have as women, which I'm sure is a topic of your guys' conference this weekend. But the other issue we talk about is the issues we share as Native American women in this profession that's largely men. And as Native women, we encountered, you know, a lot of unique situations. The number one is that just a complete lack of role models. You know, obviously as the first, you know, when I went through college and stuff, I didn't know I was the first. I was always searching for a Native architect who was a woman. And, you know, I just couldn't find any. And I found a couple men, but, you know, so it wasn't, I didn't know that I was the first. So it's a huge lack of role models. And so we're all trying to get out there as much as possible and make ourselves known so that we can encourage our young women to think about this as a viable way of helping our community. As young Native people, we're often taught about how important not only our family is, but our extended family and our community as a whole, and what our role is to help better that community. And traditionally, I think a lot of Native people think the way to help your community is to be a doctor or to be a lawyer or to go into some kind of social service field. And they don't really think about the built environment that, you know, in most reservation communities, the built environment is in a very, very sad shape. And it's something that's kind of been forgotten as, you know, as an expression of who we are. It just kind of gets put in the background. It's very, you know, seen as utilitarian, and we don't want to spend money on it because we just have other things to worry about. So it's not really thought of as a viable and feasible way to help your community. So we're trying to get out there and show that it is, and that Wanda, Tamara, and I were talking about this presentation, and that one of the ways that we want to really encourage our young women is telling them about our traditions, how women in most of our cultures, that role is something that we should be continuing on and, you know, now bringing back and redefining in a way that, you know, makes sense and makes it very natural that we would become architects. So one of the things that we're seeing within our practices is that on the client side, we're seeing more and more women. You know, when I was practicing in mainstream architecture, it was very common when I would show up to meetings that I would be the only woman, obviously the only Native for sure, but you know, a lot of times the only woman. Now, when I go to meetings on tribal land, it's mostly women, and it's very odd to, not odd, but it's very unusual to see, you know, a meeting where it's all men and me. I love the picture at the bottom there where you see one guy in that meeting and he's sitting in the back, you know, kind of observing, because it's all the women making the decisions on this, you know, on this project. So that's what we're seeing. And so we have this kind of reversal of tradition that's happening that, you know, I'll explain to you isn't really unusual in Indigenous society. What is different is, as Native women, we have different communications protocol working in tribal communities with Native men, especially an older Native man. When I was a young architect and I first started working in tribal communities, I used to say, I can't wait to get older, because then I didn't have all these, you know, as many kind of protocols that I had to follow. Because a lot of traditional men still have kind of some taboos about working and, you know, spending time with a younger Indigenous woman. So there was all those things that you have to kind of be cognizant of, and it's different with every tribe. And so, you know, as Native people, we're raised in our own culture and starting to work around the community, around the United States with different cultures. That was something that I really had to learn and, you know, figure out how to ask those questions and figure out how to navigate that. You know, when I went to a meeting and it was older men, you know, knowing that there was a protocol that had to be followed, that I couldn't just jump in and start the meeting and start, you know, taking control of the meeting and getting my things done. It's a very definite path that has to be followed in these meetings. And it's, you know, it's not like mainstream where you start a meeting, you have an agenda and it's boom, 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 boom. It's, you know, it's all over the place, and you have to be able to kind of flow with that as a Native person, but also as a woman, that, you know, sometimes we have to come at things kind of from the side. The exciting thing about where we are with Indigenous women is we have a great future. This was at our conference, the AICAE conference in 2019, where we were able to get seated are all the kind of the old timers, all of us who are licensed architects, and then behind us is the future. This is just a handful of the women who are currently in architecture school, getting their masters, getting their doctorates. And so that's our future. We have, you know, just an amazing kind of roster of women who are coming up into this, and who are active in their communities, and who will, you know, want to be involved in bettering our built environment. So, you know, as our role as kind of these, you know, trailblazer timers, we really take our role seriously of mentoring these young women and being there for them, and you know, hopefully, you know, as a firm owner, you know, they want to move to Lincoln, Nebraska, so I can hire them, and, you know, in my firm. Traditionally, you know, when I said that we want to make being an architect make sense and be a natural for our young Indigenous women and kids. And the way to do that is to help them really understand, as women, what our tradition was and what our history is within our own communities. So Wanda, Tamara, and I put this presentation together as 3 women from 3 different communities, 3 different cultures. You know, we talked a lot about what are the commonalities, what are things that our cultures all experience that led us to having women's roles in a certain way, and how those women roles have changed throughout European contact. So, you know, before European contact, there were hundreds of cultures here in the in the Americas. And, what I'm going to talk about today is really just a small piece of it, and it's not meant to be, um, to represent everybody. It's really just about some generalities and some, really specific situations. So there are exceptions and pick from. When Europeans came, some of the early accounts that they have written about their observations of these native communities were because they saw the women doing these really labor-intensive tasks of, dressing the game, butchering a deer, a buffalo, making the homes, preparing the food, doing all these things. And it appeared to them that they were almost like slaves to the men, and that was some of the writings described them as such. So what was also happening is a lot of times when the Europeans were at the camp and observing tribes, they were there at a time where there wasn't warfare happening or there wasn't a hunting party out. And so the men were around camp and they were, sharpening weapons or, their main role is hunting and warfare. So when they weren't doing those things, it kind of looked like they were slacking off. And so the Europeans who were observing this, to them, that meant the women were subservient. The men got to lay around and do nothing. The women did all the work. When in reality, there was this really balanced and kind of reciprocal division of labor and responsibilities that, wasn't real, kind of cut and dry like Europeans kind of were used to. The other thing that was observed was this kinship that they have the distinguishing who was who, because there was tribal communities. It's a whole clan, and in Lakota it's WIA, which is our extended family. So that was something that was very different that the Europeans observed. A lot of the communities were also matriarchal, where the lineage was traced back through the mom. And that was really important because it goes to showing how women had this importance and within the family, because the reputation and the status of the clan came down through the mothers. There was a lot of care given to raising daughters and making sure that the daughters were skilled in certain things and behaved a certain way, so to bring honor to the family. The sons, they knew the sons were going to leave. The sons were going to leave and become a part of their wives' families. So it was really a lot of effort, expended on raising these daughters. Reciprocity with gender roles was something that was also really, I think, foreign for the European observers, because it was this kind of equal and balanced view that they really couldn't wrap their head around. And so a lot of the accounts that are written try to explain it in a way that is, kind of based on their understanding of men and women were supposed to be subservient to men, and that men were above women. And that isn't, the reality is that isn't really what they observed when they went to these tribal communities. Oops, sorry. So what was happening in a lot of these tribal communities is the men had this not really figurehead, but kind of a figurehead. They were out hunting. They were out, when there was war, they were out fighting. When the Europeans came, they only wanted to deal with men. So the men were the ones that, went in and interacted with the Europeans. They were the ceremonial heads, the religious heads. It was the women, usually the clan leaders, the matriarchal women who were the ones who appointed the leaders. Who they got together and decided who was going to be, the leaders of the whole community. The women also owned all the household goods. Any type of tool and all that was the woman's. In most of these communities, we found the woman also not only designed, but made and took care of and thus owned the home. So they were very involved in how the home was designed, because everything in that home was theirs. Every tool, every blanket, every, bed, where the fire went, any kind of cooking utensils, anything for the children, that was owned by the woman. So, it goes to follow that how that is arranged and organized within a home is the woman's responsibility. So, it was interesting that in a lot of these communities, the woman was so important that polygamy was kind of a norm, because a man could not go without having a woman. Whereas a woman, it was very common for a woman to, be widowed or divorced and still be able to run a household. But a man, if he was widowed or divorced, he would, pretty much be left with just like his horse and his weapon. He didn't have anything else. He didn't have a house. He didn't have any tools or, utensils for cooking, and he didn't even know how to cook. So it was almost kind of unbalanced there, where the man was seen as needing a woman. And that was kind of the goal of the parents, to get the son married. Whereas a woman was raised to be pretty independent, and knowing that there is the possibility with the man out, warfare, that she could be a widow. So she had to be able to run that household on her own. Things such as food was community shared, so she didn't have to worry about that. So that allowed this autonomy for the women. So as women, we became and always were kind of responsible for our community, responsible for our family unit, our immediate children and that family, but the extended family, the multi-generational family, and thus the community, responsible for the health. How did they eat? What did they eat? Did they have enough to eat? Did everybody get included, including the sick, the elderly, the disenfranchised? All those people were taken care of because of the women. They had an organizational system that allowed them to incorporate the whole society in the distribution of any type of wealth, of food, and including all those people in decision making and as part of the community. So wealth and possessions also came down through the woman. And the woman then, was kind of behind the scenes, in terms of what the Europeans saw. But the reality was always and has always been that the woman was, probably more important in a society in terms of the health and the welfare of that society than even the men. And that became more so as after European contact, where especially going into colonialism and when the reservation system came about, the men's sole purpose was, hunting or warfare. Those went away. So whereas the women still had to keep doing what they always did, feed the family, take care of the family, make the house, all that stuff. So it became more important that the woman be, I guess, continue her role as the leader of the family. So when the Europeans came, the leaders, the men, they only wanted to deal with Indian men. So they perceived that the women were property of the men, since that's kind of how it their society functioned, where women were seen as delicate or weak. And so when they saw Native women doing hard work, they assumed that they were forced to do that, that there was some type of indentured servant type thing going on, and they didn't understand that that was really just the division of labor. So when the reservation system and colonialism happened, they tried to force these Native communities into their definition of family, separate them into nuclear homes, give them land based on these nuclear families, take the children, send them to boarding school to teach them to speak English and act not Native, to kind of take that away from them and turn them into Americans. And then rather than allowing communal type resources, which was how they, everything happened, it was, you get this allotment, you get this amount of food, they get this amount, and it became all individualized. And so therefore it was really easy for people to kind of fall through the cracks, and these disenfranchised people, elderly people, sick people are often forgotten. And it kind of really destroyed the community aspect of these Native communities. And it's kind of what led to where we are today with our built environment. Some of these ideas that political importance is still within the woman, but it's I'm trying to think of how to explain this in a in a politically correct way. So now in modern society, we have a lot of men who are leading our tribal communities, and there's been a lot of struggle with that. And I think we're starting to want to get back to seeing our women not only be behind the scenes like we have been traditionally, but be out front, start to exert our influence. Additional roles.
Tammy, it looks like you froze up a little bit. I think I'm going to turn your video off and see if that helps.
Now we have a lot of women who think it needs to be done. Okay.
I think we lost Tammy. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, something happened. Looked like it looked like something restarted for a second when you shut my screen off. Yeah.
I think we lost the screen share too.
Okay, let me try to get that screen share back.
Thank you. This is absolutely fascinating.
Screen back. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat.
Okay, can everybody see it again?
Yep.
Okay. So as I was saying, now in this 21st century, we're starting to see Native women kind of, continue our roles as the chief providers of the household, but also kind of trying to reestablish our role as community caretakers, get that community unit back to being, kind of a holistic, functioning group rather than individualized nuclear families, because that's kind of where I think our reservation communities have fallen apart. The WIA exists, the extended family exists, but the reliance on each other doesn't exist anymore. You know, economically, for food, for housing, all that stuff is still pretty individualized. So women are, you know, still seen as the leaders. They are more often the head of household. They, you know, are better educated than our Native men. And now is what's happening is you're starting to see us more, I think, being more visible, getting past that idea of we needed to stay in the background and appoint our men to be the face, be the visible leaders. So that's a way that, you know, our role as Indigenous women is changing. You know, not being, you know, don't be afraid to be out there and be seen, you know, because that is something as a Native woman, I remember being taught that, you know, there was a certain way we had to act, being modest and making sure that everybody else gets the attention, and, you know, don't draw attention to yourself. And so there's these things that as women and as Native women, we have to learn to get past in order to, you know, make ourselves leaders and make ourselves be seen as leaders and therefore be successful as leaders. So how does that relate to architecture? As Native people existing on the continent before colonization, there were hundreds of cultures and there were hundreds of different types of structures, and they all responded to the unique resources, the unique climate, the unique culture of the area, of the people, you know, who designed them and used them. So, you know, like I said before, most often, because the women were the ones using the structure more, storing their things there, they most often designed it and built it. So these structures that were designed and built were highly functional, but also, you know, in their form, in their functionality, became really beautiful, and, you know, in their kind of in their simplicity and in their, you know, extreme organization, you know, because they had to be, you know, super functional and super organized. So, and that's something that, as well, first of all, Native architecture is usually not taught in architecture school. You know, American architecture usually starts kind of at colonization. So this, you know, the history of these hundreds of cultures, these hundreds of types of dwellings, and this, you know, thousands of years of existence on this continent is not really touched on. And when it is, this role of women as being the first architects is definitely not touched on. In fact, you know, it was something that, you know, Wanda, Tamara, and I, you know, were kind of discussing and came to it like, you know, we were the first architects, you know, so it's something that's not.
We lost you again, Tammy.
Different cultures. Hello, I hear you guys.
All right, now you're back.
Sounds better.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know what's wrong. I'm not getting any messages on mine about internet connection or anything.
We'll just let you know if you drop out. I hope you don't mind if we interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So, so I'm just going to go through real quick some of these individual cultures that we were able to kind of get some information on about how the women design their structures. The wigwam, which is a very commonly known structure for the northern Indians, like in Minnesota, Wisconsin, some of the northeastern tribes. This was their structure. They were nomadic, so it had to be easily to take down and to move. this was a community, the Algonquins, which were very matriarchal. Everything revolved around the women. So the women were the ones who it's documented that they owned and they moved this dwelling. They were responsible for loading it up and transporting it. So it had to be really mobile and really easy to move to their different camps. The Iroquois, on the other hand, they were not nomadic. They lived in one area, so they were able to build these structures that were a little bit more permanent. But the interesting thing about their structure is it housed their whole entire extended family. So, you know, there were, you know, many people living in this longhouse. Up to 20 families would live in here, all from the mom's side. So it was, you know, the kind of the true representation of the multi-generational home. And the interesting thing that I saw was that this is also a very similar lodge type home that you see with the Vikings and Indonesian cultures. And those cultures were also very matriarchal, and the women had very powerful roles within their communities as leaders. You know, if you think about, you know, all the things that we hear about the Vikings and that culture, how the women were shield maids and how they, you know, went to war and how they were responsible. They could be leaders. So I don't know if that has anything to do with, you know, how this longhouse developed, but to me, that's like kind of one of the interesting little nuggets there that I still have to kind of drill down on a little bit. Teepee, this is from my community, the Lakotas, Dakotas, and Nakotas. This is obviously a structure built for a nomadic lifestyle. The women were the ones responsible for harvesting the poles, cleaning the buffalo hide, transporting it, and they owned it. The men got to decorate it, and they would decorate it with something that, you know, like kind of talking about their prowess in hunting or the prowess in warfare or something. But this is still kind of the way. We still see teepees in different types of camping and situations like that, but you know, obviously not for you know, our lodging and any type of full-time homes. Grass houses were built by the tribes of the Southern Plains. This was one where the whole community would build each structure, so it was in these structures, the communities would get together and kind of build them together. Were the leaders of this community, also it's matriarchal again. But this was one where we saw that while the women didn't primarily make the structure, it was considered theirs. So we think that you know, they had probably a lot to do with the design of it and how it was organized and designed around their lifestyle and what they needed on a daily basis. They also were responsible for upkeep of it, so they had to be able to maintain it. The Hogan, this is one that's really interesting because it's the DNA that the Navajo from the Southwest desert. This is one of the few structures, because they were semi-nomadic, they traveled from camp to camp to camp, following their herds, the sheep herds. They would build hogans for that purpose, but they would also build them for ceremonial purpose. And they were pretty permanent. And this is a structure that's still used today. Driving around the Southwest, I was just in New Mexico this week. You know, you see those everywhere, still used by families. A lot of families will have a tradition, and either the grandmother or, you know, somebody lives in the Hogan, or they use it for ceremonial purposes. A lot of families also still have kind of this semi-nomadic lifestyle. They'll have a house in, you know, in the city in Albuquerque or whatever, and then they'll have land out, you know, in the country where they'll have a Hogan. So it's interesting to me because it's still such a big part of their community. the Hogan is something in the DNA culture that is built by the men. But the whole design about the Hogan, and this could be a whole nother presentation. And actually Tamara has one based on this, like what does the Hogan mean and why is it important? But the whole design and the kind of the concept behind it is based on a woman. A woman, you know, there's like the woman's belly button. So it's kind of this whole thing about their creation story. But so the essence of the Hogan is a female form, but it was something built by the men. The Navajo, the DNA, they follow their clan down through the women. So it's still a very female-based society. But I thought the Hogan is something, if you ever go down to that area, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it in the traditional form, but you'll also see it in kind of, you know, current architecture. You know, you'll see a gas station in the shape of a Hogan. You'll see, you know, so they use it everywhere, and so it's kind of lost a little bit of its cultural and symbolic meaning, but it's something that, you know, they're still keeping as part of their everyday life. The DNA they're also probably the tribe in America, in the North America, that has held on to their culture. I think they have, there was a study out, I think in like 10 years ago with the 2010 census that showed that like 65% of the people who live on the reservation are bilingual, which is amazing, because I think most tribes, it's probably less than 5–10%. And the same study showed that of first graders on the reservation, 85% were bilingual. So, you know, they're being taught this from a very young age, and it's very, it's not uncommon to, well, let me put this in way. It's very uncommon to find a DNA person who doesn't speak their language. So it's, you know, they've managed to hold on to their culture probably in a more widespread way than other cultures. And I don't know if that has anything to do with, you know, why they're able to, you know, hold on to their architecture form too. So what's happened since then? So now our communities have kind of lost this tie to how we lived, you know, what our history was. These are, you know, these pictures could be anywhere on any reservation in America. You know, now survival is our focus. You know, we don't have just living day to day. You know, there's scarce opportunities for employment. You know, we have substandard housing, substandard buildings, just kind of fighting for day-to-day life. The idea of our built environment relating to our culture has kind of gone by the wayside. You know, we don't have access to traditional building materials. Our traditional lifestyle is gone, so there's really no need for it. You know, access to materials.
Tammy, we lost you again. Sounds like you're starting to come back a little though.
How to live in that, exist in that.
Did we lose? Oh, there you are.
I went, yep, I keep going on mute for some reason. I'm not even touching my computer, but I don't know if
I don't know what's going on.
It's kicking me back to mute or what. So sorry about that. So I'm not sure about how much you heard of that, but it's basically, you know, now we have this lifestyle that's gone. We have, you know, we don't have access to how we used to live, how we used to build, and, you know, what do we do now? And so tribes are in this kind of gray area of not knowing how to build with what we've been given, and how do we translate that into representing a culture and a lifestyle that no longer exists.
Your
So,
slides, I believe, stopped sharing if you were
oops,
sharing. Again, sorry to keep interrupting.
no, that's fine. Something keeps happening. There we go. Now, see that now?
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Okay. So tribal cultures are trying to figure out how to create an architecture that relates to who we are now. You know, our lifestyle has changed drastically, and how do we now react to that? A lot of us were nomadic or semi-nomadic, and how do we relate to, you know, being in one place and having, you know, the building materials are completely different, the lifestyle is completely different. What do we do? How do we create communities that respond to who we are now, and how do we define who we are now? So all the ideas are things that, oops, as women, as Indigenous women, and as the keepers of our families, keepers of our health, of our communities, you know, how do we bring this value of consensus building, of making sure that the whole society is listened to, active and, you know, open-minded listening, and, you know, all these traits that as Indigenous women were taught and we practice in leading our communities. How do we bring that as architects now and use it to help our communities reestablish a Indigenous architecture that reflects who we are? So what I want to show you now is some examples of what Wanda, Tamara, and I are doing in our practices, just as some real quick ideas of you know, how we translate this as Indigenous women into taking care of our communities. So this is one that Wanda did up in Canada, and Canada has an amazing relationship with their First People. You know, they have this whole idea of reconciliation where everything, you know, every day, everybody recognizes their tie to their First Nations people, and it's just amazing. And so it's, you know, every school, every government meeting, every government building recognizes this. So the relationship is a lot better than it is here in the United States. And this is a project that Wanda did of an early learning center. And you know, when we do education projects, to me, these are the ones that are, you know, this is the money. This is where we can really make the biggest impact with our children, obviously, not only working with them and showing them what we do, but, you know, giving them access to this type of architecture on a daily basis. And it's something that they interact with every day, and they have, you know, can start to gain cultural pride about who they are. This is another one she did up in Ontario that's, I think, is just amazing. It's an embassy, which is, you know, this would never happen here in America, but they're recognizing this unique government to government relationship between the Indigenous people and the government. And, you know, we have the same government to government relationship down here, but, you know, this type of recognition, I don't think is going to happen here. You know, but her design here is, you know, based on the wigwam, and it's, you know, it's a very feminine form, and it's a very beautiful recognition of this tribal of this tribe and how they see themselves, and how she can take that idea of this traditional home and translate it into this very amazing modern contemporary architecture. This is one, I'm trying to think if I skipped one here. Oh, that's it. Okay, so this is one that Tamara did, her studio down in Albuquerque. She does a lot. She's just studio probably 10 years ago, maybe not quite. So she does a lot of work around the Southwest, and one of the things that she wanted to talk about with this slide is that not every building can be new with tribes. In fact, it's very rare to have a new building on a tribal reservation here in America. I mean, most people will go their whole lives never seen a new building built on a tribe. Schools have to last, 60, 70 years. So a new school is, once in a lifetime situation for a tribe. So a lot of the children never encounter an architect never encounter a new building being done. So most of what we do is renovations. It's taking existing buildings and bringing new life to them, and reusing existing structures, so creating a function that also tries to start to design a contemporary architecture, so that our communities can start to have a facelift and start to, as a whole, even the older buildings start to relate to who the tribes are. Oops. I'm sorry, I'm having an issue here with my mouse. So this is another one that she did, Navajo Technical University. It's like a community college down in Chinle. It's a new classroom building, and this one is amazing because it's these are students who are going to two-year college, and a lot of them will hopefully go on to think about pursuing architecture, or some maybe mechanical engineering or some type of building related profession, because they are going to school in this amazing new building. And this is a way that she's trying to bring this idea of the modern DNA aesthetic into an everyday kind of building here in Chinle. The Navajo Technical University campus in Chinle it's been around for a long time, but they're starting to build more sure. And so she tries not kind of
It looks like we lost Tammy. And we'll wait just a moment to see if we can get her back in.
Did I lose you guys again?
Oh, there you are.
Oh. Okay. I was off into mute, and then sorry about that. I'm going to skip ahead here to the last couple slides. So this is a project that we did down in Arizona. And this one, to be, it was all about sovereignty and working with the community to show that as a sovereign nation, they can define their own architecture. So Gila River's been doing a lot of new buildings, and their architecture down there is really interested in it. And to me, it really captures who the Gila River people are. This is a project we designed that's unbuilt for the Wounded Knee Memorial. It commemorates the Wounded Knee Massacre, which happened in 1890 with my tribe, Oglala Lakota Nation. And this is one where, this redefinition of who we are as Lakota people. We're not nomadic anymore. We're gonna, we're on this land now. They put us here. We're gonna stay here. We'll be here forever. We're not gonna move no matter what. So this building kind of is the opposite of what a teepee does. Teepee kind of, hits the land lightly. This one penetrates the land. It grasps the land. It makes a strong statement that, we're not going to leave. We're here forever. And something happened on this land with this massacre, and it's ours. And so we're going to commemorate it. This is the school that Vanessa talked about, that we worked really closely with the community on. It was a very strong school board led by women who really engaged this process with us and who really were behind us on this really, this very active design. We worked with the children, and this kind of started out as not, plush shops, mostly because we wanted to, have access to the parents. We wanted, we'll take the children in another room, keep them busy so that we can talk to the parents. Well, in the other room, the children were just as interested in talking about this and giving us ideas. It ended up that the main concepts for the building came from the children. So, so that was kind of a happy accident on that one. The last one I want to talk about is one that's just finishing construction now up in Pine Ridge. It's the Lakota Art Space. It's a building designed to kind of be a business incubator for local artists, something that's missing on most tribal communities. So it's a very community interactive building. We designed it with the artists, and they were very adamant that it be designed around the Lakota star knowledge, which is basically this idea of what happens in the heavens happens on the earth through the earth forms. And so we did an interpretation of this, and it is a small building. It's grant funded, so we had, very specific things we had to get in it. So one of the ways that we tried to incorporate some community space without kind of being programmatic community space was to do an outdoor area that's going to be used for art fairs, and people can come here and sell jewelry, or they can sell their food at lunchtime, and because there's really a lack of kind of commerce here on the reservation. So we wanted to create this place that did more than just what the grant would allow. And this was not only obviously led by me, but it was the owners group was all women. So these are just ways that I wanted to show you that the women in these Indigenous communities are really starting to have a big effect on our built environment, both from the client side and then now through the architecture side. And we haven't even gotten into who we've seen and who we are starting to interact with on the engineering side.
There we go.
Happening, and I'm very excited for our future. And
Tammy, I think we lost the tail end of your presentation. I'm so sad. This is just fascinating. Committee, what would you like to do at this point?
So why don't we present and talk about the Women in Architecture Grant Award recipients. If we are able to get Tammy back, we can ask her some questions. But let's see who are the winners of this year's grant.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, well, this was our inaugural year for the grant for Women in Architecture. Colleen, if you could give us the back slide. And we had a wonderful group of women that submitted their qualifications, what they're used for. We have been collecting or fundraising, so to speak, for this grant for several years, so that we had the opportunity to help for the cost of the intent is to help for the cost of the AIA and licensure cost, because that is really we're advocating for more women to be licensed. We want to make sure we can help, and so we have been fortunate to have more fun this year than we had anticipated, so we were able to provide grants to 4 women. All of the candidates were excellent candidates, and it was hard to pick them out, to be honest with you, because they all were doing wonderful work and really could benefit. But the committee picked 4, and our first recipient, next slide, Colleen, is Ebeji Ijewere, Associate AIA NOMA, and she actually is a moderator at our next session, so we'll get to meet her, so it's very exciting. Next, we also have Terry Watson, Associate AIA, as a recipient for our grant. Next, we have Stephanie Alvarez, Associate AIA recipient, and our last recipient, next, is Lorena, and I apologize for the name problems, Keniswick. Elena tried to help me on that one, and Gary, thank you. So we're very, very happy to have the ability to give this grant to 4 women to help them with their licensure. We decided to put our money where our mouth is, and that's what we're doing. And I believe Tammy has been able to join us back so we can take advantage. There was a lot of questions in the chat, and if we have still have her, and if she can spare some time within our wonderfully talented technology challenges that we all have. This is at the moment the new normal. We have to deal with technology and Zoom. We will have some questions, and I think Vanessa was going to monitor that. So if she's back, Vanessa, the floor is.
It looks like she's not back.
Oh, we lost her. Somebody sent me a text. She was lost, and she's back. So.
We'll collect your questions. We'll share them with Tammy, and if we can share them with the group again through either posting them through Facebook or the website. So we'll definitely get your questions over to Tammy.
Vanessa, if we by any reason can get her back, let's follow up the program. And if she's back at any point, we can make an arrangement, maybe after the guest speaker that's coming next, maybe she can come back for a short session of Q&A. But otherwise, we just address the questions through Facebook or the chat.
And I have to say that the work she presented was extremely interesting, and many of those things she said were very interesting. An unkind husband could be a homeless one. There was some really very, very interesting statements of how their setup was, and so we're hoping. And Naki?
One thing I wanted to say is whenever I see one of these presentations, especially today's, which was something I probably haven't seen anything like that since one of my classes in college, that one person made a similar presentation. This type of architecture really needs to be part of the conversation of what goes on in our architectural education. Our history classes don't cover anything of this. All we see is European models, and that's it. And I feel in a way, I feel cheated about it, that I have to wait till my age to see something like this, in a conference.
Well, I know my history books did have a section, and back then it was Bannister Fletcher, so I'm dating myself. But that wasn't covered. Like the teacher, I don't even know that I opened the pages more than the first. You just skipped it. What little there was, it was skipped, and you went straight into Western civilization. I know we are very proud of of our grant, so I'm not sure if I'm putting the recipients on the spot, but maybe if they're willing to show us their face and just say a few little notes. And I know Ebeji should be on. We could start with her, and she could, wave at us and say something about the grant or whatever. So Ebeji, if you don't mind, I think you're on. Oh, maybe not. She should be on. She's coming on too. I know Terry. I saw her name, Terry Watson.
And Stephanie Alvarez is there too, and she just put a message in the chat, so maybe she can personally present the message she posted there.
And Lorena is on the call as well. So turn on your screens and your.
Okay.
Oh, everybody's trying to fix themselves up.
All right. So.
Oh, Terry, come back on, Terry. Don't go away.
Okay. Go ahead, Terry.
Go ahead, Terry.
I just want to say thank you. I'm so sorry. I just kind of tuned back in. But I just want to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be a recipient. It's very, very honoring and motivational. So I just want to say thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And actually what I believe I said in my letter, and all of you, is that we really want you to share in a year what you did, how we were able to help you. This is part of this summit. Proceeds are also going to fund our scholarship. We want to continue to help more women become licensed, particularly African Americans, any diversity, any and all women, and whatever we can do to help that. And so we're hoping that in a year you can give us a little report, maybe what you did, what you changed. We'll put you on the spot somehow.
Absolutely, I will be more than welcome. Absolutely.
Excellent. But now, so don't go away. Your screen still needs to stay on there. Stephanie, now you're.
Hi, everyone.
First.
Hi. Yes, as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to apply for this grant and to be here at this summit. It was very inspirational. Just seeing all these women, like strong women in architecture, it really gave me much more confidence to be able to emerge as a professional. Thank you so much, honestly.
You're welcome. And Lorena K, that's what Alina says she calls you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. First of all, this summit has been amazing, fascinating to see every single story unfold and all the different trajectories. So it was incredible to just hear the magnitude of the power that all of these women have, and being recognized by all of you it really is such an honor and very encouraging. But I wanted to say a special thank you to Pat Bosch and Alina and Gia and Nada and Sunny and some of the women who are at Perkins and Will and I consider as mentors on a daily basis. And they really do such an incredible job of reaching out and connecting to me. So this is just one more extension of that. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so very, very, very much. And I don't believe Ebeji's on the call yet. So congratulations, and you can coordinate all the details with Cheryl in the office. And I did tell the rest of the participants, part of your grant included, not only we announced you, but that you got to come to the summit. So we're very happy you guys were able to join and that we're helping to inspire the next generation, which is our goal. So thank you very much, Colleen. And now we have a video from our other summit sponsor, Epic. So Colleen, if you could share that. And ladies, you're off the hook.
Clear.
Oh, we lost you. Colleen, we lost the video.
We're working on it.
Okay, no problem. I didn't hear anything back, so I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Clear. Open. graceful spaces, powerful architectural roof and floor deck ceiling systems, that span distances unmatched in the industry, with exceptional sound absorption, soaring lines, a clean look, and many unique appearances that create an architectural focal point. Strong, and versatile, elegant, and distinctive. Features uniquely suited to diverse requirements. With added benefits designed to improve performance. Built responsibly with recycled materials and designed to make use of natural light. Practical, contemporary, beautiful, inspiring creativity through performance,
Thank you, Colleen. And I have to say thank you to Epic for being one of our summit sponsors. An absolutely beautiful video. And I must say the same thing about Suprema. Thank you for being our summit. And you made roofing look really good and exciting. And roofing is very necessary, but not always the most glamorous to take pictures and videos of. So congrats to both of our sponsors. And now we're going to take a 15-minute break, but because everybody had so much fun with the trivia game, those who want to stay, Naomi and Vanessa are going to do their magic again. Otherwise, those of you want to, get a cup of coffee or a snack or a restroom, we will start the show back again punctually at 3:30. Naomi, the floor is yours.
All right, so a lot of people liked the questions yesterday, so I'm going to share my screen. It's a little bit challenging with a laptop because I can't get to see the answers myself, so I had to memorize them.
All right, and so we have the Buzzin link in the chat, so if you can just go to that site, I'll put it in there once again, so it's right there. Go to that site and name yourself. Don't forget to name yourself. And we can get started.
Why is it not working? Okay, here we go. Sorry. Okay, so there's a little bit of a dispute with this person because she's said to be the first licensed architect in the United States, but we are confirming that. But she's the first female to earn a master's degree in architecture, actually from MIT. She co-founded and co-owned the first female architecture practice in Florida, Jacksonville. And while you're buzzing in, fun fact, when she went on her job site, she had a subcontractor chase her with a 2x4 and said, "God Almighty never intended a man to be bossed by a woman." She also was denied 3 times to the Massachusetts AIA.
I don't know the answer, but my buzzer says locked.
Probably because Christine was the first one to buzz in.
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I must have
it just
done
happened
that
so quick.
You did that accidentally. It's okay.
Yeah.
Do you know the answer?
No, I don't.
All right, so I'm gonna clear the buzzer and I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Go buzz.
No. Well, this one was really hard. And honestly, this is at the 1900s. Ida Anna Ryan. So you should go and Google some of these people. All right. Okay. Next one.
All right.
Okay. This is easy. She's a founder of a leading international architecture firm in Miami. She is an architect and a landscape architect and has taught at both Harvard and University of Miami.
All right.
Very famous firm in Miami.
So Glenda was our first buzzer.
Lorinda Spear from Arquitectonica.
Yes, very true. Okay. All right. Next one. She was a pioneer in the field of architecture, being the first woman to be licensed in Miami. She was one of the designers of the University of Miami campus and the master plan for the city of Coral Gables.
Hi,
Natty.
Marion Manley.
Yes, Natty.
Yes.
I'm gonna cheat. I can't get my little buzz in to work.
Oh, I locked you out, baby. I clicked right away.
Okay, so this one a lot of people may not know, and kudos to you if you do. She followed in the footsteps of her great-great-grandfather and became the CEO of what started as the first African-American architecture firm in the United States.
Well, I think I know the grandfather, but I don't know her name.
What's the last name? Wait. Vanessa, sorry, priority.
Well,
buzzed?
No one has buzzed.
I'm buzzing. Revere.
No.
No, okay.
So she was on the team that did the African American Museum in DC. Also the Washington nobody? Daryl McKizak. So again, Google these people.
We need to make sure you put all these questions on our event right.
I'll give you all my research, okay? Okay. She, along with Anna Ryan, as I was saying, she was one of the pioneer women in architecture. She co-founded and co-owned the first female architecture practice in Florida.
Well, if we didn't know the other one, are we gonna know
you know
this
him,
one?
you know this one. No takers?
No buzzers.
No buzzers. It's okay. This one was really hard. Just get our brain working. Okay, Isabel Roberts. So Google these people. 1900s pioneers. This one you should know because it was mentioned yesterday in one of the presentations.
I don't remember her name.
This morning. This Irish female duo is racking up awards.
Yes, they are.
World Building of the Year Award, Artistic Directors for the 2018 Venice Architecture Biennale, and 2020 the RIBA Gold Medal and the Pritzker Prize.
Glenda was quick with the buzz on that one.
Glenda.
Yeah, that's Yvonne Farrell and Shelley McNamara.
Yes, from Grafton Architects. Very good. All right. Okay, so these are easy questions now, okay? Easy questions. This monument was erected to mark the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution and stands as a landmark in this famous city. Easy.
Natty.
Natty, you're muted.
Yeah, Arc de Triomphe.
No.
Oh.
Eiffel Tower?
The Eiffel Tower.
Oh,
I thought it was for the World's Fair.
I thought so too.
Yes, it's for the World's Fair, but it was also for the French Revolution.
And it was supposed to be temporary, and the French people hated it.
Yes,
Okay.
it was supposed to be removed. And it's a lot of steps to the top. I've climbed it. Okay, so this one everybody got yes. Well, one
Rice.
rice, but more importantly, sticky rice.
Oh. Also, no Cuban rice here.
No Cuban rice. It did say too that it's so sealed so tightly that no type of weeds grows between those things. So we may think about using it in our architecture. I don't know.
Seriously.
Okay. All right. She reigns over Ellis Island.
Oh, come on.
I had to give some easy questions.
Alex Goldstein.
Hold on, I'm trying to unmute.
You're
Lady Liberty.
You can come in through Natty's phone.
Say it. Lady Liberty?
Yes, Lady Liberty.
Oh, I see.
All right.
Okay, so
Wait, I'm gonna stick a question in there. Who wrote the poem?
Who wrote the poem?
A woman. Give me your tired Emma something.
Yeah, Emma Lazarus.
Lourdes. Okay,
I was just there for the convention 2 years ago, and it was awesome.
Okay, Nike Shoe Company was named after this Greek goddess of victory who sits atop the Acropolis. Not you, Lourdes, somebody else.
Caitlin.
Athena?
Athena Nike, yes.
But I figured that part was.
Yes, that was, well, that part
Implied.
was obvious, but you know, Nike, Nike. A couple, that was it, never mind. I have more, but they were not in the PowerPoint presentation, so.
Well, I can tell you and the members, I have been collecting this kind of data since I came back from that summit in Chicago in 2009, because there was so much I didn't know and I still don't know. And today when Julia was showing all the different people that she's been interviewing, there's so many women out there that we don't know anything about, and we have to share all of our stories. So I'm hoping everybody is feeling as excited and inspired by all this as I know I personally am. So we'll just continue.
So how long for the break? Until 3:30?
Yes, we have about 6 minutes. So you got time to go get some, go to the restroom.
Wine, whatever it is.
Now wine, now you have to mention that. I'm in the office.
There's beer in the fridge, Lourdes.
Ah!
Lourdes, your office is like 5 minutes from my house. I have wine here.
And there's actually beer in the fridge too, from our last happy hour.
So.
All right, see you guys in 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Body
Thank
break.
you so much.
All right.
Hi, TJ, welcome. We'll be getting started in just a moment. We're on a break.
Hi, no problem. Yep. Okay, I'll be back then in a minute.
Okay, I'll say it. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I'm sorry.
Lourdes?
Yes.
Did you say it was 5 o'clock somewhere?
I did. I didn't have a drink yesterday when I got home. I was too tired.
Well, we have a whole
Yes.
closet full.
Tea earlier, so is that okay?
Isn't it nice to have leftovers in the office of of beer and rum and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
I think I told you guys this before. When I started working here, I opened up that closet and it's floor to ceiling with liquor. And I was like, what goes on in this place? I couldn't
You
believe
used to have a
it.
stash, Lourdes, you remember?
Yep.
Wine, it was wine.
Yeah, this is not a stash. This is like waiting for the apocalypse or something. It's unbelievable.
Or in this case, the quarantine.
Yeah.
Preparation is everything.
Yes, it is. And did you guys notice that when the quarantine, we were running out of paper towel, out of toilet paper, nobody was running out of alcohol. That's just, you know.
Never.
Makes you wonder the supply chain.
It was funny because the city of New Orleans started limiting quantities of things and closing things down. But the mayor goes on and she's like, to be clear, we are not limiting alcohol sales, okay?
Priorities.
Process that there was a storm going through her place.
We started a white trash cocktail party in our yard with social distancing in our front driveway. And everyone brought their own chairs and distance, but you know, it didn't keep us from the alcohol at all.
All right, so
You can get alcohol delivered.
Yes, you can.
It's just in time. My computer says 3:30.
It's
so
3:30, ladies.
Yep.
So welcome
Let's
back.
get the ball rolling.
Get the ball rolling.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a great break. Now we're getting ready to talk about a very important topic, which is inclusion. And for that, I have the pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Sina Howard. Rose?
Go ahead, Ahipsia.
Okay. So Sina Howard is a principal and managing director for Perkins & Will in North Carolina. She's an award-winning architect, strategist, mentor, and team builder. Sina is known for her success leading visionary, complex, and culturally significant projects, including the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Her leadership embraces cross-disciplinary collaboration as an essential tool for success, integrating a broad range of experience and specialized knowledge such as urban design, public policy, history, economics, and anthropology into the architectural process, which is pretty amazing. Her current work includes the Motown Museum in Detroit, Michigan, a project that commemorates the history and continued legacy of Berry Gordy and Motown's unique artists and internationally recognized sound. In LA, Sina is spearheading the efforts to create a new Black Los Angeles monument, an outdoor art, and a culture experience on Crenshaw Boulevard, an iconic city street. In North Carolina, where she's from, Sina leads the Perkins & Will team in the planning and design of the new Brooklyn Village development in the heart of Uptown Charlotte. This 19-acre project is one of the largest and most culturally significant community developments in the entire country, reimagining the Race Brooklyn neighborhood while celebrating the community's original rich history. And the next fact is one of my favorite. Sina is the founding member of Perkins & Will Global Diversity and Inclusion Council. By example and through direct action and mentoring, she is an advocate for diversity within the architecture profession, a field where minority and women professionals are historically underrepresented. So welcome, Sina Howard. The stage is yours.
Wonderful, thank you. So glad to be here. And I am going to share my screen here, and hopefully you guys can see it. So
we can see it.
Thank you, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. That was so gracious. So good afternoon. I know it's been a quite the day, a long day for most of us here, but I want to hopefully share a little bit with you about inclusion. You know, we've been listening to our peers all day with insight into leadership and mentorship. And it was really, for me, quite a pleasure to share the platform with my colleague in Miami, Pat Bosch, who gave an incredible presentation this morning. So I'm happy to extend the discussion this afternoon by sharing my thoughts on inclusivity. So I was a partner with the Freelon Group, which was the second largest African-American owned firm in the country, located here in North Carolina, where I sit right now. And we merged with Perkins & Will over 6 years ago, and I now lead our North Carolina practice of about 75 people in our 2 studios in Durham and Charlotte. So the Freelon Group, we had a rich history and portfolio of cultural work, specifically museums, libraries, cultural centers, as well as higher education and science and technology. So this work has really continued and expanded in breadth, geography, and intensity, really, with Perkins & Will. I believe that all of the speakers today have really underscored and made clear the case for the necessity of women in our profession. It simply boils down to the fact that professions are less diverse, less relevant, creative, and innovative when they don't have women. I love this from the Women's Federation for World Peace. They recently noted that women possess particular qualities of natural leadership. Some notable ones are understanding survival, renewal, and reinvention. They're in tune to previously unseen opportunity and this notion of pursuing purpose and meaning in most everything they undertake. Women will often talk decisions through with many more people than their male counterparts. This is exactly why women have been fundamental in advancing and infusing robust engagement, really towards the goal of creating a more inclusive design process. And that's going to be my focus of today with you. There is evidence to support the advantage of these natural leadership abilities. Most recently, it's been noted by the New York Times, Forbes magazine, and CNN that the countries with the greatest success in fighting the coronavirus pandemic are led by women. Many women leaders leverage specific qualities that fuel excellence. Collaboration, women are highly collaborative. They're knowledge seekers and critical thinkers. They look for legitimacy behind opportunities. They're curious, strategic, they push boundaries. They handle crisis situations well, and they are agile, and this is a result of high emotional intelligence. These styles and qualities have been a great benefit to the field of architecture as more women have entered our profession. An example is the fact that beyond reframing conversations around equity, women bringing a more thoughtful, proactive approach have caused significant positive movements in design. We see this in areas such as climate change, sustainability, and resiliency. This recent statement in Architect Journal underscores this impact. We know that design companies who frequently win the industry's best known award program for sustainable design excellence have far greater gender parity than the industry at large. However, of particular importance is the impact women are having on advancing the process of engagement and redefining our practice model. Engagement is certainly moving beyond a necessary step to get through quickly and to check off one's list to a fundamental element of great design and architecture. It's really not possible to have a truly inclusive profession if we only consider the diversity of our staff, teams, and clients, and the what we do, but do not consider the communities that are negatively affected by being left out of the design process or the how of what we do. For far too long, our profession has been passive in acknowledging the power that we have as designers to negatively impact communities and slow to take action in more positive directions. Women have certainly embraced this charge in full force. Several years ago, I coined a phrase called remembrance design. It's essentially a community process that engages historically underserved communities by identifying the virtue in their stories and using those stories as a framework to create spaces that promote social and cultural sustenance moving forward. It embraces co-design, process often defined or described as an umbrella term for participatory, co-creation, and open design processes. Co-design reflects a fundamental change in the traditional designer-client relationship, because a key tenet of co-design is that users as experts of their own experience become central to the design process. In many instances, this has the tremendous benefit of helping communities reconcile with the past while also planning their future, really around a shared vision. This approach of deep engagement of community-rooted partners flies in the face of our profession that is often ego-driven, placing the designer, and in many instances, a single individual designer, disproportionately at the center of the process. This has led to our unique design approach. Well, we best describe this as leveraging community members as collaborators and history as informant to uncover precious stories that can be expressed in design. These 4 areas are key to that process. Increased inclusivity and engagement involves expanding collaborations and partnerships and embracing non-traditional teaming arrangements, which can include historians, public artists, politicians, and anthropologists, social anthropologists on our teams. Leveraging urban cultural assets. This is important to accessible placemaking and preventing cultural erasure and rampant displacement. Leading with culture for inclusivity in design in rapidly changing areas. This is really about respecting the prevailing culture by enhancing rather than replacing what currently exists. Recognizing all projects as opportunities to mend physical or social rifts. This is about understanding that what we do is never neutral and embracing a responsibility to do better. It is tempting to believe that this design approach of increased inclusivity through enhanced engagement and expanded collaborations can result in compromised design. However, it leads to the creation of a true sense of place. It results in design imbued with powerful storytelling, elevating stories to the same fundamental importance of our work as program or site. The result of this process can be seen in our work that are iconic catalysts in the communities they serve. These buildings reflect our view of the built environment as an expression of human understanding and our collective values. But beyond buildings, we have been intrigued by the spaces and places in between and around such icons, how people use these spaces, particularly during critical social moments. What you see on the screen are images from notable instances such as the March for Our Lives rally against gun violence in 2018 or the National Women's March in 2017. This has led us to a more intense exploration of cultural landscapes and extending culture and storytelling well beyond the walls of particular building typologies. I'll share with you a few examples from our portfolio of how the process of inclusivity and stories manifest in meaningful built expression. The Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture, and this project is here in my home in Charlotte. We have a studio in Charlotte, and it's right down the street from our studio. Critical to this project was actually the notion of locating a center for African American culture in what is considered the cultural heart of the city of Charlotte, near the convention center, near the Wachovia, at that time it was Wachovia, now some other bank, Bank of America, I think, tower, and on a really ill-proportioned site, 400 feet long, barely 60 feet wide, and our client really struggled with accepting the site that was offered by the city, because it really was a site that was just the access ramp to the service, the new tower that was also under construction at the same time. So in mining for the history and story, we were inspired by a nearby neighborhood called Brooklyn Village, and it was one of the most affluent African-American neighborhoods in North Carolina at that time, the largest and affluent. They owned their own banks, clothiers, stores, and the image on the right is really the school where every child in this neighborhood graduated from. The second Hello? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So what was important is that, during graduation time, there was this school, and it had this edifice that they called Jacob's Ladder, and this was the photo moment of every graduation class. They all stood on this edifice, Jacob's Ladder, and took their graduation pictures. So we were thinking about that and this notion of weaving and patterns and textiles, and what that meant in terms of freedom for African Americans during that time. And a lot of those, the weaving had messages in them. So melding those two concepts and thinking about lifting the building up, elevating it up, and imbuing it with this notion of Jacob's Ladder, and also this weaving pattern, and making it sort of a canvas or a backdrop in this urban area. Thinking about the building, 360 degrees as well, thinking about the backside, which is really, this is a zero lot line, but being careful to also express it in a way that that eventually, until something is built up against it, it can stand alone. And this is one of my favorite pictures, images, because this is really taken from the highway that destroyed the Brooklyn Village neighborhood. So you can see the building just nestles right there in its context with Jacob's Ladder and the notion of weaving. The next project is in Atlanta, still here in the South, the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. This is about creating a space for action, inspired by stories of individuals in large marches here in our nation's capital and in other areas around the world, such as Tiananmen Square. We need to tell the story of civil and human rights worldwide. And so what we were struck by was the human expression when united in solidarity, when people interlock and interlock their arms and embrace each other when they're united for a particular cause. So we thought about, envisioned this building as an object in the green with these canted monolithic walls standing in solidarity and embracing really the precious content within the walls of the space. The skin was thought about really in terms of diversity of people that fight for human and civil rights around the world. They are diverse in size and color, and they come together in different patterns. So we really just wanted to express something that was dynamic on this canted wall. And you can see it really, it sits high there in the Coca-Cola Plaza in Atlanta. And it's really a beacon for the city and a reminder to all of us that civility is a measure of our respect for each other. You know, and this is another collaboration with a sculpture artist here, Larry Kirkland, to reinforce the story of solidarity coming together. And he does this in this feature that uses water in a very powerful way. The final building typology, then I'll move on to a couple of more examples of cultural landscapes, is the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. On our mall. So, you know, this was a very large story to tell because it represents an entire race of people over, you know, several continents and over hundreds and hundreds of years. So, you know, the design team, we met in 2009 in Washington, D.C., just a few days after the inauguration of President Barack Obama as the first African-American president of the United States. And so these were some of the images that were brought to this kind of initial riff session about what this project should be. And what you see is that the images that we started off with and where the building is really is this melding of African and African-American sensibilities. So if you see on the lower left here, this notion of uplifting arms, people just took these photographs with their cell phones, you know, from the weekend before, celebrating the gestures that people do when they celebrate. In the middle there, we were inspired by how light is modulated and how access to light and healing and wellness is so important. On the bottom, images of the porch, and I'll share a little bit more about that, but really thinking about what the porch meant to African Americans, particularly in the South. And then on the far right, I should mention the team was a team of 4 architects. We were the lead firm, but we had 3 other architecture firms, David Ajay, lead designer, Davis Brody Bond out of New York, and also the Smith Group, which was there in Washington, D.C. But David brought forth the corona or the caryatid, which is a West African figure, a Yoruban figure used in art and architecture. So thinking about how those elements can help shape form, but then really thinking about how the skin could articulate itself. We were inspired by images from the southern parts of the United States in areas like Charleston, New Orleans, and Savannah. And another story that we wanted to bring forward is that a lot of that beautiful ironwork was done by African-American craftsmen, and many people didn't know that. So figuring out how we can just think about interpolating or interpreting that historic work into the skin of this building. And you can see here from the photograph, this notion of the corona, the form of the corona angled up in that hopeful gesture, the articulation of the skin, modulating light, are all coming together to express those powerful ideas. And the notion of the skin actually taking on a different color. It's a variegated skin, but in full sunlight or moonlight or dawn or dusk, it changes color and looks differently. And that was important to us as well, because that reflects all the different hues, particularly in the African-American race. And really thinking about this notion of being successful in distilling this building to the pure form and expression of the corona was important to us. And also looking at that porch, the design recognizes the story of the porch and the importance of African Americans in using the porch, particularly in the South, because they really used it as a space for community, a space that mediated between indoor and outdoor experiences. And so this notion of the porch in exaggerated form, and also bringing in the story of water, from the point that you enter, you pass by water as a reminder of the transatlantic slave period and the way in which Africans at that time were brought to America. And this is a combination of still and moving water, representing the coexistence of themes such as freedom and slavery, peace and war. Water on the interior of the building used in a different way, streaming vertically for cleansing and reflection against the quote here by MLK, but the hope of justice and how there should always be an aspiration for justice. And then finally on this last slide, you can see our interpretation of that large porch on the south side, a monumental structure spanning nearly 180 feet with a 60-foot deep knife edge, and with that welcoming upward gesture, but just strong and hopeful. This is a project, moving on to you know, sort of expanding in the culture. I'm going to show you two projects in the last couple minutes I have here. And this one is really about a 1 acre site, a very small site in Greenville, North Carolina. It's just about less than an hour and a half from my home. And this is a historically Black riverside community that existed up until the mid-60s. There's a historic photograph there. And what was unique about this community, they were not only the only Black community, that's where the Blacks lived in Greenville, but they had a cherished church, which was the pride of their community. And all community members attended this church, reinforcing values, particularly the value of education for their children. So the city demolished the entire community and the church, or the entire community under the guise of urban renewal. The community fought to save the church, and later that church was destroyed, presumably by arson. And you can see in the historic photograph here, the road even wraps around it. But the community was wiped out and there really wasn't anything put back there. It was just erased. So now, a couple years ago when we came on as part of a larger master plan development of this area, the city was developing this area. They got to this 1 acre site and there was a lot of discussion and a lot of pushback from the community that this should be an area that commemorates what was there. So in talking and deep engagement with the community and their stories, there were three themes that really resonated for us. This notion of community, the pride the community had, spirituality, the music and the structure of this church. And the music, people talked about how they sort of heard and would stand outside of this church on Sunday afternoons and hear, you know, mornings and afternoon, and hear the music emanating from the building, and history, the prominence and the pride that was there. These are all things that they felt like they lost. So how could we reflect this? The music resonated with us, thinking about this notion of musical notation or freedom within a framework. Music is freedom, but there's also structure similar to the way this church had. And looking at the historic church and significant elements of the church, there were 22 founders. So we found 22 significant elements, either stained glass windows that were donated or particular structural elements that aligned right nearly in the same area as the park. Thinking about how we can reflect these notions of prominence, gathering, rejoicing. Looking at the historic, you know, how this could, you know, reflect itself as sort of a remnant of the past, but in a modern way expressing this, and looking at item number 4, you see there the stepped terrace viewing down towards the river where they used to baptize, do all the baptisms at the river. And so this was our sort of renderings for that at the time, looking at, you know, bringing the prominence of that tower back in a way that's really modern and fresh. The glazing treatment that you see here recalls the stained glass windows of the church, And the glazing panels are in the pattern, the exact patterns of the lots on the land area of the community that was raised. Interpretive panels tell the stories of individual community members, many who are still living, and the area is reminiscent of the sacredness of worship and gathering. Here are some scouting shots. The project is due to open in about 6 weeks, so this is some in-progress scouting shots on the photography that you can see. And this is a review reflecting the prominent tower and the walk towards the river. These are the cherished, framing the cherished trees, including the sycamores that are carefully protected and framed. This notion of spirituality, of an uplifting feeling that the space modulates natural light and nature. And finally, this is the last one that I will discuss with you. I think this project was mentioned in my introduction. It's a massive project, so I'll just hit the highlights. But this is Destination Crenshaw in South Los Angeles. And, you know, people ask me, they call it an outdoor museum. They call it a bunch of things. But basically, it's a 1.3 mile outdoor experience. It's a community-inspired public art and streetscape design project that really aspires to highlight the world-class contributions of Black Los Angeles. And it also has a goal of revitalizing the current day heart of that community. Really, this will be the first project, outdoor project of its kind in LA that really strategically uses an iconic city street name to anchor and provide the context for public artwork and streetscape design. And it will celebrate, you know, all of the contributions of this community that haven't been acknowledged, contributions to entertainment culture, car and clothing cultures, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Pentecostal movement, Soul Train, Tina Turner, Tom Bradley, you know, political movements, and most importantly, this renaissance of Black visual artists, from Kehinde Wiley to Mark Bradford to Kerry James Marshall. All of these are contributions that need to be acknowledged. So this project was actually a result of a decision by the city to run a train at grade through this community. And so this is pretty significant, because here we are in this 21st century doing things that were done to African-American communities, which is, you know, destroying communities with infrastructure, be it roads or transit. So the community decided to just take a stand and really fight back and take what they were given. I often call it turn these lemons into lemonade. So this is the 1.3 mile from 60th to 48th Street, and the orange color you see there is where the stop is in this community. So how do you take this 1.3 mile and really imbue culture into it? Well, again, it takes deep partnership with the community, many hours and time, and still ongoing, spent with talking and exploring and seeing how we could do this, visioning and coming up with 4 nuggets that are essential about celebrating heritage, leveraging assets, creating unique experiences, and catalyzing growth. We knew as designers that we had, you know, pretty much a lot of moving parts here between architecture, landscape, art, interpretive design. So we needed a unifying narrative to bring this all together. And at the time, I was reading a book by Dr. Mindy Fuller called Root Shock that really talks about the traumatic stressed communities as part of constant upheaval. Dr. Fuller is a clinical psychologist and also a professor of urban policy. And so looking at 400 years of the history of this community, or African Americans in this country, you know, things haven't happened as overtly as slavery or, you know, Jim Crow era, but things are happening in rapid succession in latter periods that have the same result of trauma to these communities. So thinking about, you know, how this community got here, all the way from the forced global slave migration that was from obviously east to west, from Africa to the Americas, and also looking at the domestic migrations. That was the first one being from south to north for African Americans to escape the hardships of the South, and then from south to west after the war. So exploring how this population got here to begin with through 60 years, and we'll see what the 2020 census says, but looking at the census records, they really aligned right in this area that you see. This is where Crenshaw Boulevard is today. And this represents the largest African-American population west of the Mississippi that exists in the United States, particularly one that has existed for multiple generations. So really thinking about this notion of root shock and migration and how do you grow and where you're planted. We came up with a metaphor, a unifying narrative of the giant star grass of the African diaspora. And this is a grass that's native to the African side savanna. It's a rhizome grass, and it was used as bedding hay on slave ships. And so what's particular about this grass is that it really traced the diaspora across the globe. And it thrived in inhospitable locations. It really just should have stayed in the savanna and not really planted itself. Here today in America, we know this grass as Bermuda grass. And it's a shallow root, deeply rooted, robust, thriving. And to us, this really metaphorically represents the well-rooted and thriving nature of this community, the interconnected network of growth and the ability to be resilient and resourceful as a result of struggle. So really we're telling the story of grow where you're planted through 4 major lenses coming down the boulevard. The first one being improvisation, which speaks to resourcefulness and how the Black culture thrives and continues to push boundaries, often because of limited access to resources. First stories of significant moments, people, places, from personal to political, from local to international. Dreams, this is what might be possible or conceived that can happen, and constant notion to keep dreaming. And finally, togetherness. And this is the resilience of Black culture that is born out of togetherness that is both ancestral and an ongoing necessity. Black people come together in everyday life to celebrate, mourn, resist, worship. And so I obviously can't go through all 4 of these lenses because I would run out of time. But really, if you think about that, this project is really about including new streetscapes, exhibits, art installations, several small parks, and places for entertainment and culture. So I'll just share with you a little bit about the beginning of the experience and the end. The entire experience has to have a voice. The voice is unapologetically Black, bold and energetic, inspiring and uplifting, diverse and inclusive. It's about looking at architectural interventions such as shade canopies and landscape and interventions, brass inlays, to really push this metaphor of growing where you're planted. So there's a connective tissue of this infrastructure and insertions working together to create this sense of place along the 1.3 miles. The collaboration with the community results in historical figures being represented, not necessarily in a black and white static way, but collaborating with artists to take on a quintessential Black LA aesthetic to represent historical figures, collaborating with quilters in the community to look at how the project could be branded up and down this 1.3 miles in a way that represents the artistry coming out of that community. Same with storytelling and interpretive panels, how they're branded and laid out, looking at embedments and interpretation in the sidewalk of community members to express those stories. And then this is most important. This is also a project about environmental equity. So we're replanting over 822 trees. In 2012, the city of Atlanta brought the space shuttle Endeavour down this boulevard and wiped out every single tree. Honestly, there's not a single tree as you stand and look down at 1.3 mile, and they never put it back. So you can imagine the heat island that's there. It's about bringing in significant artists. There are 10 very, very high profile artists that will have commissions, 3D commissions on the boulevard. And then little sneak preview on the first end, the experience begins with a 120-foot custom sign, bespoke sign that that honestly can be seen from an airplane. That was the point. And then as you go through it, you know, it leverages assets like the wall. There's a wall in this community. Everybody pretty much knows it. It's called, it has the artist rendition of Our Mighty Contributions there. So leveraging and enhancing those assets. And finally, at the end, we envisioned this notion of Sankofa. This was an image that one of the community members held up in one of our meetings and talked about how important that meant to her, Sankofa being the African term of go back and get what was taken. So we envisioned this terminus as being that Sankofa of turning back on itself, an edifice that rises up, that expresses, you know, the rhizome pattern and the grading, that has artistry on the other side, underbelly of it, and that allows for this bespoke artwork that really is a moment that you can look back down this 1.3 mile boulevard from where you came, and there can be, you know, it's obviously togetherness, so gatherings are expressed there, the community can come together. And finally, if you, on a clear day, you can look back past the historic Vision Theater sign that's right there to the Hollywood Hills. So really this uplifting and looking back as the terminus to Destination Crenshaw. And finally, I'll leave you with this quote from Dr. Fullerlove. This is one of my favorite quotes that talks about investing time, money, and love in these communities to protect culture. So thank you very much.
What an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Sina. We have great questions, so bear with me. Elizabeth Camargo asked, after the projects that involve community engagement open and are being used, is there a follow-up to understand if the original intentions were embraced and used by the community?
Yes, and not only is there a follow-up, but the community doesn't go away. So all of these projects that I have worked on, they're lifelong relationships. So, you know, and for us as designers and creatives, it's important to really, and fulfilling, to really stand back and look at how the community uses these projects. I've said this before, in ways that we did not envision and imagine. They take it, and that's the beauty of design when it's not all the purview of the designer, but they just expand it. So no, you're in it for life in a way. So that's the way I look at it.
Have time for another question? But I have a great one.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I have a question by, let me try to see if I can find it here. By Naomi Harrison. How do you know, how do you protect the firm culture and legacy when Black minority firms are bought out by larger, predominantly white-led firms?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. And you know, I mentioned when we were the Freelon group, we were led by Phil Freelon, you know, my predecessor and mentor in many ways. And he was the majority partner, and he had 6 partners. I was one, a minority partner. And I remember all of the discussions and, you know, that we had in considering merging with Perkins and Will. And what was unique is that it was because it was Perkins and Will, and the discussions were that we can protect the culture. We did not want to lose the work, the people. And I think I remember at the time, you know, actually, you know, we were meeting with the CEO of Perkins and Will, and he said, you know, we don't merge and acquire firms to change the culture. We acquire them because they're excellent firms to keep doing what they're doing. So you can even see how this work is actually expanding culturally and our general team makeup hasn't really changed. So I really think you need to really look at the firm that you would merge with when you're a prominent African American firm, and make sure that culture is preserved.
Okay, I actually have, do we have time for another one?
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I actually have one, and it's about engagement, because you talk about that inclusion is above and beyond engagement. Are there any new metrics of engagement on the firms? I mean, how do you measure that?
Yeah, I think we measure, because we have I've seen engagement in the past 5 years go from 0 to 100. So because in the past we just did engagement with the people that were naturally going to be engaged, or the people that were already the griots in the community, or the people that talked the loudest, and didn't really go totally out of our way to reach people who had very powerful things to say, but you got to seek them out. You have to be intentional about it. So our firm has tons of metrics and ways in which we do that. That would have to be another time that I would have to share with you on. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Sina. Sorry, it was really a very inspiring. It's amazing to see the project that you have shared with us. I would like to ask a question. Will you be able to stay with us until the end? Because we have another chat room coming up at 4:25 for 20 minutes. And if you can stay, we'd love to have you lead in one of the chat rooms so the additional questions that came up can be addressed at the chat room.
Yes, yes. Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you can stay.
Ready. Bye-bye.
Right, thank you. Naomi, you have the baton now.
Thank you so much. That was really awesome. This entire summit has been really great. So for Forget Star Wars, this is a real Jedi. I'm going to introduce the moderator to you. We have an excellent group of panelists for this session. Ibehi Ijiwere is an architectural designer practicing in and influencing the Miami design community. She founded and hosts Layers of Design Creative Studio, a podcast where she expresses her passion for global community development through design and architecture, and interviews various designers and architects in a unique sketch session called Sketch It Out. This year, during a pandemic and racial unrest, she came out of her financial comfort zone and quit her job, taking a bold step to work for herself as an independent consultant, providing design and drafting services, researching ways to make good design available to communities regardless of their socio-economical, racial, or cultural backgrounds. She feels a strong sense of responsibility to be a good role model in and out of the architecture industry, inspiring others and ultimately wanting no one to feel alone in an unjust world as she had. Ibehi volunteers at the Lotus House, teaching art to the children of the mother shelter there. She's a recipient of the Women in Architecture Miami inaugural annual grant, as we heard earlier, an active member of AIA Miami and NOMA South Florida, where I have the privilege to serve with her, and enjoys having conversations with like-minded individuals. Thank you, Ibehi, and our amazing panelists for this session. Let's start.
Hello. Thank you so much, Naomi, for that wonderful introduction. And I just want to say thank you to the AIA Women in Architecture Committee, as well as the AIA Committee, for this opportunity and for awarding me with the Women in Architecture grant that will be used towards my AIA exams. Receiving this grant means a lot because it not only shows financial support towards my licensure, but also represents a unity and strength that can be found within the profession. Well, today I have the honor of moderating an amazing panel of leaders in the profession. I have with us, it's Veronica Rivera, who is a registered landscape architect and architectural designer at Field Operations in the San Francisco office. We have TJ Marston, who is a principal at Plot Studio, an instructor in landscape architecture and environmental and the urban design at FIU, and the co-chair of ASLA Women in Architecture. And finally, to complete our panel, we have Jason Hagopian, who is a registered architect and the principal at Sao Design Group here in Miami. I just want to say big welcome to our panelists, and thank you so much for joining us. I would like to start by asking, as leaders in the profession, how do you promote and sustain inclusivity in your work environment? We can start with TJ.
Okay, me first.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, first, I actually want to kind of say that I don't consider myself a leader in the profession. I know that sounds strange because that's what they've asked me to be here, but that I actually would say, even though I run my own firm, it's a small, very small practice still in its infancy. And I'm very much more of here, I can relate more to the people that are still struggling to make it. But I have learned a lot along the way in the many work environments that I've been in and in my own, running my own business. And I think first and foremost for me, it's always been equal pay. I think it's the way that you can show really what people are worth. And then being purposeful in intentionally sort of seeking out people always to work with. Not just in who I employ. Often for me still it's temporary employees because I'm still growing. But in who I do work with, I'm always seeking out people who are very different from myself in my own background because I have something to learn from everybody, and I need to meet and be around constantly new people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different drives in life for me to grow and continue to learn. And when I surround myself with that, it just automatically helps me learn and creates a more inclusive environment, and we do that together. And then I would say the last with that is sort of being purposeful in investing in the employees that I have and anybody that works with me, that I don't just look at it as hiring anybody for a job, but that I take the time to really understand that person and what their goals are, and making sure that it's always a win-win for each of us, that they are getting growth and mentorship that they want out of the relationship is just as important to me as getting the job done, as well as me growing and learning. And so I think when you have that in mind and you're seeking people who are different from you, that you automatically make people feel like they're part of the team. And to me, that's really what inclusivity is about. So again, I'll hand it off to the others.
Yes, Veronica?
So I think I like to lead by example and show the younger generation that we're all in the process of kind of defining who we are as professionals, and that's okay, right? What's acceptable, what's the norm in the professional world has greatly been defined by white males, right? So creating that standard, or creating what, bringing your personality to the table, how you speak, how you walk, how you dress, and it maybe not being under what is the standard or the norm, and fighting for that to kind of bring your flavor to things without feeling that you're doing it wrong, because for so long it's been defined by this like white male world, and it's like, but who am I? Who's my voice? And letting others younger than me or different than me feel that they can also bring their own personality, that they don't have to imitate the white male leader to be respected, to grow, to speak up. I think that's the best way to show diversity. We don't have to all strive to be what is traditionally defined in order to be successful, in order to make it, in order to grow. And it is a struggle. It's a struggle that I personally am still going with, right? Like I feel self-conscious because I'm not as formal, and I do bring some sass to the table, and I give attitude, and you know what I mean? And that's not the way my boss does it, but fighting to kind of do things in my own way and not feel that I'm doing them wrong because I'm doing them differently.
Definitely. And I think that's something that's very important as well, to really allow every individual sort of express themselves. So Jason?
Thank you, Begaye. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Well, I definitely echo Veronica and TJ, of course. I mean, I am a white male, but that said, you know, we all have our own inclusionary and diversity stories. So, and I've had my own, but I would say for me, it's definitely, you know, inclusion starts with with me and about me leading by example and being projecting my, that I feel included. And then by that, I also have a mid-sized office, TJ, and everything I do is magnified. So it's a big percentage of influence. So I believe it starts with me. I'm setting the culture of inclusivity in my office, and every person I add to my team needs to support that culture, that vision for my office. And I have to lead by example, of course. And this is something, by not being included during certain parts of my life, you know what that's like. I mean, females know this, African Americans know this, gay people know this. So what you definitely don't want to do as you're managing a group of people or a team. So it's really being conscious of that. I think it puts us at an advantage, honestly, because we have a direct relationship to it. And I would say kind of as a takeaway there is that it's one of the roles we need to do is to educate others that may not even understand what this all means, inclusivity and diversity. I mean, obviously it's a very sensitive, strong, important issue right now, but I don't take it for granted that everybody even understands how to go about doing it, so.
Definitely. Thank you for those answers. So speaking on hiring and recruiting employees, how do you intentionally recruit a more inclusive and diverse staff? Let's start with TJ.
I think I kind of covered this a little bit in my first answer. So I'll just kind of reiterate that I make an intention to, anytime I'm, looking for new projects or anything like that, I'm constantly looking in areas that are not of comfort to me. And I don't even mean like not comfortable. I just mean like that I'm not familiar with the people or the community. And that I love that as a human being because they teach me something. And when I'm growing, I'm at my best, and not just in terms of my performance. When I'm growing, I'm just a more peaceful person when I'm learning than when I already feel like I'm, it's like ego is lost, when you're in this state of learning. And that it just helps to create an environment around me of working on projects that are, with people that are more diverse, but also, bringing in that team, it just requires that. So it's just sort of being intentional in the work that I do.
Very nice. Veronica?
I think hiring is a challenge when it comes to hiring diversity, because there's just not enough range of students to hire from. And I think that's a bigger issue. In my grad school, there was, I think, one African American per year. And when we go to hire, obviously we're evaluating the quality of the work, not like we're not paying attention to where they're from or what they look like, right? We're looking at a portfolio, we barely pay attention to the names. And fortunately, I do work in an office where the majority of the office is female, which I love, right? And I try to, I keep my boss in check that it stays that way. But there's a really long path ahead to really have a diverse profession, because I think it's the issue starts in the early years, that there's not enough African American kids or Latino kids getting to grad school and getting to study architecture and landscape architecture and urban design. So I personally, as an individual, am seeking, and everything that has happened in the last couple of years has kind of heightened this for me. So I'm just seeking at a personal level, kind of being able to go to schools or teach or do things where other Latino kids, other African American kids can be like, oh wait, she kind of talks like me and looks like me. I can also be an urban designer. I can also be an architect. I can also be a landscape architect, because most of these kids feel like they're in someone else's world, right? They live in borrowed land. Home is somewhere else. Or even though they call the US home, they know they're not seen as part of the US, right? We're always foreigners. It doesn't matter how many years we've been in the US. So it's really hard for them to see themselves in the power. Like they have the power to design their cities too. So I think it's a bigger conversation. It's a bigger challenge. It's not just about at the time of hiring, because if the pool that you can select from is not diverse, then we can't really point fingers at architectural offices that they're not diverse enough. But what we can do is point to architecture firms and say, what are you doing to help with the crux of the problem, which is getting these kids to school and getting these kids to grad school in order to be able to diversify the profession 5, 10, 15 years down the line. I think it's a bigger issue that we all can still contribute.
Thank you. I definitely agree with everything you just said, and it's something that I can relate to very well. You know, coming from Lagos, Nigeria, moving to the States in 2011 to study architecture, it was a bit challenging, not even really seeing, first of all, anyone that was Black around so much. I was mainly, most of the time, I was the only Black person in my class. And then to take it a step further, even just seeing a Nigerian in the same space. So that was really challenging because it wasn't really, there was no one per se, or there was not a group of people that I felt comfortable enough to sort of support me in my journey. So I definitely agree that it's something that we need to also tackle right from, you know, the roots. So Jason.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with both of my fellow panelists there, and I've kind of written down, like, for me it's an intention. So fortunately my office has always been very diverse and inclusionary. Some of that perhaps happened subconsciously, but I do think there has to be a conscious effort. I mean, anybody can go to anybody's corporate website for any large architecture firm or any large company and just go to the Who Are We page, and you need to scroll down like 4 pages to find a woman a lot of times, and certainly a woman of color. And of course, you can't tell who's LGBTQ plus, but suffice to say, we're probably down there too. So for me, it's, you have to set an intention. I'll tell a really quick story. I do sit on a lot of boards. One of them, of course, I used to be on the AIA board. Now I'm the president of the Miami Center for Architecture and Design board. I also sit on the board for Pride Center up in Wilton Manors. This is a very, very large LGBTQ plus community center, multi-million-dollar organization, not for profit. We're looking for board members, and we look at our stats on who's on the board, and we're very like male, gay, board member heavy. So this is not good. We need to be a diverse board. Our whole organization is all about diversity. And so we're looking and actively targeting certain, lesbian, transgendered would be wonderful. We need those voices on our board. Hello, this is part of our community, part of every community, by the way. And one of the board members kind of raised their hand and said, well, if it comes down to it, is it more important that we get somebody from the trans community, or that we get the someone from the legal, someone on the legal experience? And I said, that's not, you don't look at it that way. We are being very deliberate. If you're telling me that we can't find an amazing trans lawyer, this is not the right mindset right now. You have to change your mindset here. We have to be very deliberate about these things. Sometimes diversity doesn't just happen. I mean, clearly, it doesn't just happen, right? So I think, for me, it's setting these intentions, and I think for larger companies, certainly there are policies, there are things in their employee manuals and their hiring manuals. I even know Perkins and Will does a really good job of actually tracking and monitoring their multiple offices, to make sure that they are building a team, a diverse team. These things don't just happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank Definitely. And thank you so much for bringing that up as well. You know, a great point that you just made was being deliberate and intentional about actually hiring diverse staff, because at the end of the day, it will be a bit awkward if you hire staff just because of their color or, you know, how they identify themselves, instead of actually hiring them for their skills, because in the long run, the staff will end up noticing that they were actually hired just because of their color, and that can be really diminishing to, you know, one's self-esteem. So this final question, actually, why does inclusivity matter? We'll start with TJ.
All right, me first again. Okay, so I mean, to me, it comes down to just simple psychology. I mean, how many of us, I think every single human being knows what it's like to, at any point in their life, have worked on something with a team of people that they didn't feel like they were part of the team, and how much that affects you. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to do any work with a team when you don't feel like you're part of it, in sports, in school, in any type of work, in a relationship, you know, in whatever it is, in a family dynamic, you know, when you don't feel like you're part of the team, but then you're asked to contribute to that team, you can't be at your best, and you lose that desire to want to contribute, and you will never perform to the level that you're capable of. And you can't blame that on the team member. You can blame that often on the environment that they're in, whether it makes them feel like they are connected to you. And we don't need to look alike. We don't need to like the same things for us to be a part of the team. And that's actually what's so devastating to me right now about this polarization in our country in so many ways, is that it just continues to tear us apart when we all have so much more deep down in common. And seeing those in common things always, the human part of all of us, bringing us together and making us feel like we're part of the team. And I think, you know, as a leader, you really great leaders are really good at making everybody feel, no matter what they're bringing to the table, no matter who they are, that they're a part of the team. And then, you know, I think that when you have that, then the whole team's going to perform better. And I think, I mean, that's obviously what we want. We want to do better as a profession. So it matters that we make everybody feel like they're part of it, that we're working together.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. That was a great response. Veronica?
I would say there's twofold for me. One, the flavors in the mix, right? Like if you want to have interesting, diverse, and different designs and projects, then you need to have that in your staff, right? Like if everyone looks and thinks the same and comes from the same background, your projects are going to be equally as bland. So that's on like one part of it. And the second, it's our responsibility, right? We need to change this mentality of, oh, I struggled to get here, so you have to earn your ribbons too, or whatever the, you know. On the contrary, it's like, I know how hard it is to get here, and I know how hard, like, I know what you've gone through, so I'm going to give you a hand and I'm going to pull you up, instead of, oh, I've made it, now I'm here, you need to go through the same struggles. I think it is the responsibility of the people in power, or the people that have reached X, Y, or Z success at different scales, right? We've all done it at different scales, to help the ones that are coming up, because it's like that. The previous presentation showed that map, that timeline of all of the things that have occurred against the African American community, and there's such a strict rhythm. Like every 15 years, it's like every time a generation is starting to pull itself out, government does something to slap them in the hand. So it's literally our responsibility to keep each other in check, to call out the people that are above us, call them out on it. Like if they're only talking the talk and not walking the walk, call them out on it. Because if it's not us, if it's not the people that have control, that can vote, that can speak up, that can fight for something, then change is never going to happen, because we can't put that weight of change on the people that are struggling, on the people that are suffering it, on the people that can't vote, on the people that are being redlined or harassed, or you know, like, it's not up to them to make the change. They're suffering from the things. It's up to us, the people that have a voice, to make the change.
Definitely. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about it. I mean, I mean, for me, you know, inclusion is what, I don't know. I feel like it's part of the DNA of what it is to like be, you know, be in America, to be the, what is it all about to be here? We are, our foundation is about, you know, democracy and fairness. And I mean, you know, we're stronger together than we are separate. And that's how our whole system works. And I don't even know why I've even decided to get remotely political about this, but I'm just saying, maybe globally as an idea, I think it trickles down to what we do every day, right? So yes, more diversity in our team, and including that diversity in all the activities that we do and all the things we do every day in our offices, of course, is beneficial for our projects. It's beneficial for the person that's in your office, for the people in your office. I mean, we've all been in times in our lives when we were not included in something. As leaders in our fields, in our communities, it would be counterproductive for us to promote diversity, and then at the same time, not to practice extreme inclusion.
Mm.
This would make no sense. It of course, it does happen, you know, for sure. You know, like you said, there's deliberate efforts to bring an African-American person, and then they're going to be on our, you know, one of the CE, you know, but they're going to be the HR direct, you know, there's always something, like, sometimes there's like a but, you know, but in small companies like mine, we don't really have any, like, there's no back office or I can like stick my diversity quotient. That's not happening. Everything is very intentioned and very deliberate. And I think it's really important that there's inclusion. This builds stronger labor. This builds confidence. This builds better thinkers, freer thinkers, unfrightened, unscared, untethered creatives. Whenever anybody is non-included in an environment where they're told they're included, this is not going to be a very productive environment for that person. And to me, I wouldn't want that around me. I want everybody in my office to be free, productive, included, valued, thanked, spoken to honestly, you know, I mean, treated fairly, the way I want to be treated, the way I want to be treated.
Yes. I just want to thank all of you right now for sharing your experience and sharing some tips on how you make sure your environment is inclusive. It's really inspiring to know that there are leaders out there, you know, pushing for inclusivity. Again, it was such a pleasure being a part of this conversation. And right now we will actually be going into breakout sessions where all participants will be divided into 3 different chat rooms to continue this discussion with our panelists. So, and also at least one member from the WIA committee will be in the chat room. So enjoy and thank you.
Thank you, Begaye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
It should take just a moment to move everybody. And if you're having problems, please let me know. Cheryl, you gotta check yours, don't you? If you are left in the main room here with me and wanted to go into a chat room, please let me know and I'll see why you haven't been moved yet. You must accept the do you want to move to a chat room. Thank you.
Looks like it.
Are we all back? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Should I keep my camera on or should I?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And is Abehi going to
Yes. Well,
lead this?
I can take it away until she gets. Oh,
I'm here.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, my video was just off. Okay, so yeah, so thank you so much again to everyone for being a part of this session. And I personally learned a lot, especially in our breakout sessions and the discussions that we had. And it's just really inspiring to listen to so many different experiences. Again, that's why I started the podcast, to listen to so many experiences and not to feel alone. So I'm very, very excited for the future of architecture, honestly. Thank you.
Do you want to ask everybody to report from their session?
Oh,
Some of
yes.
the takeaways, yes. Sorry, go on, Ibehi.
Oh, yes, please. Okay, so I guess personally for me, I had my session with TJ, and it was really great hearing her experience about being a woman in architecture and how her journey started. That was really exciting because I had some really intriguing questions on how to continue my career moving forward, especially thinking about having kids. So it was, you know, some of my takeaways was just to honestly to be bold and to really just understand the employees and to understand the firms in which you want to, I guess, in which you want to work for, and get your questions ready. And definitely you can interview them just as they interview you to make sure it's the right fit. Okay, who would like to go next from this session? Naomi?
Okay, so I was with Veronica, and well, you know, Veronica, she's a ball of fire. And she was kind of introduce herself as, and she was explaining that, you know, landscape architecture, she got pitched a elevator pitch when she was in architecture school, and she ended up going over to landscape architecture because of it. And how, you know, everybody experiences outdoor spaces way more than they experience an actual building, because it's out there and everybody goes into it. And she was just really encouraging in terms of including everybody in the community, and how everybody uses a outdoor space immediately as it opens up. You know, she says they remove the barricade and then everybody starts jogging by as if they were kind of like poised before to actually start, you know, eating an ice cream cone and so forth, and how very fulfilling that is for her. So, you know, I didn't get to go to everybody's panel, which I really wanted to, but everybody was so engaging in their own. So I was seeing the messages that Jason was also, you know, fabulous as he always is. Lourdes, you wanted to wrap up Jason's
No, Jason can wrap up his
Jason can
own,
wrap up his
because you guys helped out TJ and Veronica.
I will say, and I don't want to overspeak over Vanessa, who was in our session, but one really interesting thing was there was Vicky was her name in our session, I think. She was listening
Yes.
in. Yes, Vicky. And it was really great to hear. She was, I think she sounds a lot younger than me, but who knows. She's on her firm, she's on a committee to help their firm work on inclusion and diversity. And she had a lot of really great questions. And I was really happy to hear that that she was doing that. And I think for me, I was trying to give a takeaway of, you have to be the agent of change here, Vicki. A lot of us, many architecture firms are run by senior age, older people, older than even, me. And I don't even think I'm that old, but so their mindsets are very different. Things have dramatically changed in the world in the last 20 years, 2 decades, 3 decades, let's face it. I mean, so, if it's a place you want to make better and you like where you are and it's not quite where you want it to be, be that person that makes that happen, have intentions. I told her for diversity and inclusion, for a company, you should have something down. There should be a policy. There's lots of examples out there. Email me. There's lots of big companies. I know big companies have big manuals, but smaller companies, you don't need a couple pages. That's all you need. And monitor, track, and it'll change mindsets. It will. You have to be confident. And if it's not happening where you are, find somewhere else to be happy.
It's true. Zena, I believe you also had the pleasure of being sent into a chat room. Do you want to, give us a little summary of your chat room?
Yeah, I think our chat was really good. We sort of started off talking about how I think Craig was talking about how you can basically find talent, particularly minority talent, African-American talent at different levels, the senior level. And we talked about ways to feed the pipeline, because we don't want the next generation of architects to have the same challenge that we have right now. So we're getting younger and younger and more scrappy and starting to fuel that passion in students at the grade level. And he talked a little bit about the program that he's starting. And then we went on and chatted about higher education, really. And I thought that was where we spent the bulk of our time with Bernice, really challenging, which is a very relevant conversation today. I'm having this on several School of Architecture boards that I'm on. That's the majority of our conversation is around pedagogy and how it's inaccessible. Literally, when we're only teaching students Eurocentric history, approaches, thoughts, and when we're not allowing explorations into not only other cultures, but using architecture to address other issues, social issues, when we can't bring that to the table, we're somehow feel like, we're looked down upon to do that, then that in itself discourages inclusivity and oppression, because people just leave. So we talked about how you can actually commit yourself not to leave the profession, but to stay in it and partner with other people to be an agent of change, to change pedagogy as well as the profession. So a very, very wonderful discussion.
TJ, actually, please, can you give us like a summary of what we discussed in our session?
Oh boy.
More of a takeaway.
A takeaway.
Yeah, I think the takeaway was that we really can't talk about equity for women, or for that matter for anybody unless we talk about caregiving and the challenges in that, and how right now I believe that the culture of design, both in school and out, needs to really radically shift to support caregiving. And we're seeing this in the COVID crisis right now, when caregiving needs are so high that no matter what kind of support system you think you had, people have to back out. And we don't really have good structures in the culture, in everything, to support caregivers. And it was just, I kind of told the story about how that has just radically affected my career path, having 3 young kids within, the last 10 years. And and I believe that, you know, what Jason was saying about policies, there are so many policies that small and large firms can do. And the data is out there that, you know, everyone says these excuses, oh, it would cost too much money, blah, blah, blah. But there's so much research that shows that it doesn't. If you plan ahead for these things, it does not affect the firm negatively. And again, it creates an environment of inclusivity, which is what this is about. And when caregivers feel like they can't like be here, and they don't have a flexible work arrangement, and they don't have, you know, these sorts of things. And, you know, when we just do things like maternity leave and not paternity leave and not paid family leave, then of course it's going to discriminate more against women, and they're going to make choices. Why would you, you know, if you just have a maternity leave policy? So I as a summation, you know, policies, and we need to really radically shift the way we treat anybody who's a caregiver, which is basically everybody, and around caregiving in the office.
Nice. And Veronica, your final
I think
thought?
that's one of the few positive things that might come out of this whole corona mess is we've kind of proven to our, at least in my case, my bosses, right, or that and our clients, that you can be equally as productive if like, you don't have to be in the office 9 to 9 or whatever to get the work done, right? And I hope that opens the door for more flexibility, because you can see it in the numbers, right? We all, like, especially in landscape, it's mostly a female profession, but then the higher ups are only males, because it's like we're all struggling shoulder to shoulder going up the ladder, and then suddenly you're 30 something and it's like, oh, wait, do I want a kid? If I want a kid, now's the time. And then boom, there goes the career and you lost, you know what I mean? Like you see how the drop, and it's really hard to find mentors to help you navigate that, of like, how do I continue to grow professionally and not sacrifice my family? Or how do I, you know what, how to do both? It's for me, I'm at that point right now, right? I'm 35 and I'm like, oh, shoosh kebab, like I need to start making decisions. And it's, fortunately, one of the senior partners at my office, she has 2 kids, and I saw how she's never not been a leader even after having the children, but it's a lot to juggle everything. And until we, like, females have taken on the professional world, but we haven't given the home world to males yet to the same level, right? Like we took on more, but we haven't given up the other stuff. So I feel like that's also on us, that when we teach our children, or when we expect our brothers or our uncles or it's like, no, serve your own damn food, or clean up after yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I go to my grandma's house and they're like, oh, can you serve your uncle? I'm like, hell no, he has 2 hands. He better serve his own damn food. Like, we need to stop doing this whole like, oh, we're power women, we can do it all, and share the burden too, because if not, it's never going to be equal. We need to walk the walk and talk the talk and do both.
Well, Veronica, I had the pleasure of meeting you last October in Puerto Rico when we did that session for AIA Puerto Rico. And I remember you making the comment about working 9 to 9 and children. And I remember telling you, oh, no, 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 no. And you can make the time. I like to share the story when people say, how do you have time to do this? And you make the time for the things that you love. I have a good friend who said that I bookended my AIA Miami presidency with pregnancies. I was pregnant with my second child when I was president-elect. She was at my first board meeting in January and she was 2 weeks old. And afterwards, when I was past president, I was also pregnant. But I wanted it. I loved what AIA means and what it's done for me. And I found the way to do it. And if that meant I brought the kids, and I remember my oldest, our former executive director, would say, he's better behaved than half of the board members. And he was there every day. He must have been 7 or 8. And he just knew it, and he sat and he drew. And I realized not every child is that compliant. But if you train them from the beginning, it can be done. So please don't ever think that you can't do it. You know, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. My boss always says, if you want a job done well, give it to a busy person.
Absolutely.
Like somehow like your brain manages to just do the Tetris, right? And I'm one of them. Like if I have little to do, it takes me 10 times longer to do anything. If I have a lot to do, it's like my brain goes into hyper focus and I sit down and I get it done. It doesn't matter if I have a lot to do or a little to do, I'm still gonna be working late the day before the deadline because I need a little bit of that, you know, kicking the booty and adrenaline to get stuff done. So I genuinely believe that somehow the more you have to juggle, things happen. Like you're able to do it.
Great. So, Elizabeth,
And on that note,
Yes, no, I would like just to thank you everybody once again for joining us and for the incredible presentations, inspiring, powerful, heartfelt, you name it. All the adjectives in the Webster will fit the conversations we had since yesterday and today. So we are getting to our home stretch. And before, should we do our thing, Lourdes, or thank everybody first?
Go ahead, thank everybody first.
Okay, so I'll thank everybody first, and then we do the final note. So I would like once again to thank all our sponsors, as was said so many times, without them we wouldn't be here, and our Women in Architecture grant wouldn't be flourishing. So thank you to Suprema and Epic Metals, Schluter Systems, MC Harry Associates, Minotti Miami, Ferguson, Glasgow, Schuster and Soto, Collinsworth Insurance, EC Architecture and Design, VPI, Interface, Perkins and Will, Strang, and Burton Hirsch. I would like also to thank the incredible women that hold my hand the whole way through to get this summit happening. Actually, the summit was supposed to happen last April in person. Because of COVID, it was transferred to in-person October. And then in July, we made the final decision to have it virtually. So it faced several challenges. We have to massage the program, stretch and squeeze things, but I'm so happy that you're here and we're almost at the end. So I would like to thank my committee, Lourdes Solera, Natalie Barrocal, Elena Carde, Mariana Cruz, Naomi Harrison, Egipcia Paris, Judith De Rojas, Vanessa Smith-Torres, and Matthew Soto. And my final thanks go to our AIA Miami incredible staff that did the magic behind the scenes. So most of the presentation were pretty smooth. Thank you to their expertise. So thank you to Sherry Jacobs, our Vice President and Executive Director, Colleen Stovall, Director of Programs and Events, and Marilyn Lugo, Office Manager, Membership Coordinator, and AIA Summer Camp. All right, so let's go to the final conversation. So last summit, and I don't know if many of you were last summit or not, when we finished the summit, we had some breakout groups conversation, and we asked for each woman to write down one homework to be doing the following year. So following Margaret Zinden's suggestion, it's one thing at a time, one person at a time, and you can see change happening. So I will start first letting you know what my homework was. My homework was to have the second summit. So I made it. So I'm so happy about it. And I mean, every time we do this, it's so much work. And I keep on telling myself, why do I put myself through that? But once it's over, I'm so happy and satisfied that we did. And we have the opportunity to share all this knowledge and experience with all these incredible people that join us every time. What was your homework, Izzy?
My homework was really to ensure that we continue the Women in Architecture Committee and continue to engage the younger generation. The reason Nathi and I started this committee 10 years ago was because when we were young, there was nothing for us to look at. There was no people that looked like us anywhere, office or outside of networking. And so I'm so happy that so many of our attendees are of that younger generation. and are willing to engage and participate, and we've drafted them into our committee. But I'm also pleased to see how many of our seasoned women are also involved and also on this summit, because mentorship and learning and communicating works both ways. So it's not just us mentoring the younger generation to make sure they stay licensed, but continuing to mentor people my age and a little bit older, so that we are not burned out or frustrated or very much giving up on what we think is a crazy profession. It's not a crazy profession. This is, people tell me, why don't you tell your daughter not to study architecture? I say, well, I haven't figured out what else to do. So why would I tell her no? So I think that was my goal, to continue this, to make it a summit and event that really engages, and to make it more diverse. And I'm so happy to see so many different color skins on my Zoom image. And now we just got to bring a few more men as well, and to make sure we always have a few wonderful stragglers that love these events and come back despite being the one man in the room versus the one woman in the room.
So I see we have a few more people from last year, at least our committee members. Would you like to share what was your homework from last year, if you remember? Nati, you've been quiet.
I'm quiet because I was sometimes not good at doing my homework. so to be honest with you, I had to leave last year's conference early, almost a day early, Joyce Owens and I, because we had a meeting out of town for the AIA. So I hope my homework was the same as it's been for the last 10 years, to make sure that if somebody needs help, I'm there to do it. If somebody needs advice, I'm there to answer it. Just to be open and available for whenever anybody needs anything, even if it's just, to talk, or, tell me something terrible that happened. And I've been very fortunate to be able to help a lot of people that have contacted me with issues that I never could believe were still happening in these days, in terms of sexual harassment and such. And I'm fortunate that I was able to escalate the situation to a level where I think that person, in particular, I'm thinking of, was able to get resolution at a structural level that wasn't available to her through the normal channels, and should be. So that's really been my homework, is to make sure that everybody has the opportunities that they need to do, and I will keep doing that in my little quiet self over here. And
master manipulators, what we call them.
Yeah.
We call Nati the master manipulator.
Thank you, Nati. And Vanessa, do you remember your homework?
Well, I don't know if it was specifically my homework that we decided that day, but something that I have been trying to do and trying to set as a goal for myself for the past couple of years is to increase visibility of myself, to, as Nati is saying, be a resource to other people who are like me. We talked earlier about the dire state of Black women in architecture. We only recently just hit 500 licensed Black female architects. But then once you put my other identity of being a Black Hispanic female architect, no one's even counting that. So according to NCARB, we're at 0%. So one of the things that I've been doing recently is I'm actually teaching design at Florida Atlantic University, because it is so important to increase visibility and grow the pipeline in that way, to let students know that there is a place for you as you move up and through this career. And I'm just happy to see that this year's conference also was even more diverse than last year's in terms of race and ethnicity. So that's always my goal. That's been my goal for the past couple of years is promoting and increasing visibility.
Thank you. Elena, do you remember your homework?
I joined the committee right after the summit.
Oh,
so
okay.
The summit for me was the introduction, and I did the 8x8 series.
Right.
But for me, the goal was, and I'm so happy that now we're kind of celebrating that today, was to make sure that the grant, put efforts towards the grant to happen. And so we did that. And the other one was the toolkit series, establishing those in a sequential and more frequent kind of event to also fundraise for the grant. So I think those two things were my self-assigned homework. And so very happy to have been part of this group and contribute towards that.
Thank you. Okay, I don't know if I see many more of the
Naomi
committee members,
was a
but no, yes.
participant.
I was getting there. I think she's the last one I have in the list.
I don't know about how the participants had homework. My homework was to get more involved in women in architecture. I think I succeeded.
Yes, you did.
To add more volunteer to my schedule, which has been really very rewarding, and understanding the symbiotic relationship between all of our organizations, and greater in numbers with the common goal. So Women in Architecture, BAM, NOMA, AIA in general. So I think I've done the homework that was not really assigned to me, but I've done it.
All right. No, thank you, Naomi. So my suggestion to you all is that's your homework now for next year. Just write down one thing you would like to accomplish between now and October next year, whether we have the summit or not, but at least that's something to keep ourselves in check and make sure we fulfill our own promises to ourselves, which I think is the most important thing.
So Lourdes, if I may say, just so we have everybody here, members are welcome, so join us. And we do have nice happy hours when it was not in COVID, but now we can have happy hours remotely, and we organize these events so that the community gets stronger.
Thank you, Lynn. Yes, and then based on the feedback we received, one idea was to bring some of the speakers back again individually for shorter events, maybe one happy hour or one event per speaker, so we can continue the conversation on a one-to-one basis. Well, thank you so much, everybody, again. I'm thrilled to have you all here, keeping me company this weekend. And I don't know if Lourdes has any other additional last comments to share.
No, I just want to reiterate what Elizabeth said. Thank you to all of our panelists last night and today. The conversation has been fantastic. I don't think we could have done any better except being in person. That's about it, because it has really been, every person has really brought forth some ideas and some conversations that are just so inspiring. And, it's been a lot of fun. And without Cheryl and Colleen to make this happen, so thank you, staff, for accepting the fact that you work for crazy procrastinator architects that give you stuff like, oh, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes before you need to put it up on the screen.
45?
Well,
My lucky day.
minor technicality.
Don't get me started. I just wanted to say to the committee that you guys rocked it, and congratulations on another successful program, and let's continue the effort, guys. Great job.
And we finished on time. Look at that.
I know, yes. Unbelievable.
Wait, it's 5:31, man.
All right,
Really,
1
Cheryl?
minute slack. Come on, Cheryl.
Everyone, this recording will be available Monday on the website that I've been sending you the link to, or you can check, and we'll probably have a link by Tuesday on the AIA Miami website to yesterday's recording of the event and today's.
And before I forget, we do get CEUs. We will give you here for all day today to a total of 6 CEUs. So make sure that AI Miami has your AIA number or license or whatever it is that you need, and they'll take care of all those details. So even better, you get CEUs while you're at it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Bye,
This
guys.
was super fun.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
next year.
No,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, thanks God.